So we're going to spend some more time looking at bar graphs again today and figuring out what kind of information they tell us and answering some questions about them. So if you remember from yesterday, I explained to you that graphs give us information and they help us to visually see data, important numbers shown in a picture form so that we can make sense of those numbers. So it's really important that you are able to read graphs. There's many jobs that you have as an adult require you to be able to read graphs, and even if your job does not require you to be able to read or interpret graphs, as just a citizen, as an adult, there's going to be so many times where you will be reading information and there will be a picture of a graph included with it to help you make sense of that information, and you'll just need to be able to understand how to read that graph. So this is a really important concept. So let's take a look at this graph. Here, we always want to read the title of the graph so we know what the graph is telling us. So this graph is tickets sold. And it says here that the bar graph shows the bus tickets that were sold on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Remember, graphs have two axes. There is an x-axis that goes horizontal and a y-axis that goes vertical. So in this graph, the days of the week are the x-axis, okay? And the number of tickets sold is the y-axis. I just want to make that clear because it's important to understand the difference between the two. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we can see how many tickets were sold each day. Like I said yesterday, it's important to pay attention to the scale of the graph. The scale tells you how many numbers they are skip counting by when they show the graph. So in this case, you can see they jump from 0 to 10 to 20 to 30 and so on. So they're skip counting by 10. And then there's these little tick marks in between. So you can see halfway between 0 and 10, this would represent 5. And I could write it in just to remind myself. Between the 10 and the 20, that would represent 15, because 15 is halfway between 10 and 20. Between 20 and 30 would be 25. So each of these would be going up by 5. The little tick marks there that don't have numbers. So let's take a look at what they're asking. Before we even actually answer the questions, I want you to be able to understand the graph. So I can very quickly look at this graph and I can tell you right away which day of the week had the most tickets sold. I want you to think to yourself, just by looking at this graph, at each of these bars, and which day of the week were the most tickets sold. If you said Thursday, you are correct. I can quickly see that Thursday has the tallest bar. I can also easily see that Wednesday had the fewest number of tickets sold because it has the shortest bar. So that's just right away looking at a graph. It gives you a nice visual representation of important data. So let's look at number 1. How many more tickets were sold on Thursday than on Wednesday? So we have to find the difference between the number of tickets sold on Thursday and the number of tickets sold on Wednesday. So let's figure out how many tickets were sold on Thursday. I'm going to look up here to where this bar stops. I'm going to slide over and I see that it's on 50. So I'm going to write down 50. That's how many were sold on Thursday. And then I'm going to subtract the number that were sold on Wednesday to find the difference between the two. Okay? If I look here at the bar for Wednesday and slide over, I see that it's on the number 20. So 20 were sold on Wednesday. The difference between the number of tickets sold on Thursday and on Wednesday would be 50 minus 20. Okay? 5 tens minus 2 tens is 3 tens. That's 30. So there were 30 more tickets sold on Thursday than on Wednesday. So 30 tickets more. Now, I want you to number either your paper or your dry erase board or whatever you're using to work through these problems with me. And you're going to be writing down some of the answers along with me. And I'm going to be pausing to give you a chance to try them before I review them. So we already did number 1. Write down 2, 3, 4, and 5. Leave some space in between each number so that you can work on any math that you need to work on to solve it. Number 2. On Thursday, 15 of the tickets sold were for children. How many tickets sold were for adults? So, we know how many total tickets were sold on Thursday. We already looked at that, but I'll go back and see again. On Thursday, there were 50 total tickets sold. Of those total 50 tickets, 15 of them were for adults. We need to figure out how many of them were for children. And you can do a little number bond here. There were 50 total. 15 of those 50 were for children. How many were for adults? So what I can do is I can take the 50 total and subtract the 15 that were sold for children to see how many of them were sold for adults. So why don't you try that on your paper and then write down what you think the answer is, and we will review it. Pause if you need more time. If you're not sure what 50 minus 15 is, you could have written it down like this. You could have started with, you can't do 0 minus 5, so you could have borrowed from the tens, turned this 5 into a 4, and made this into a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. So 35 of the tickets that were sold were for adults. And that number would go here in where this question mark is on the number bond. Okay? Because if you add up the number of tickets sold for children and the number of tickets sold for adults, you would get the total 50 tickets that were sold in all on Thursday. Okay? Number 3. 18 fewer tickets were sold on Friday than on Tuesday. How many tickets were sold on Friday? So, we don't have a picture of how many were sold on Friday, but we do have a picture for our bar graph of how many were sold on Tuesday. And we know that 18 fewer were sold on Friday than on Tuesday. So think about what you would need to do to figure out how many were sold on Friday. If you're kind of stuck, I'll give you a little hint. Let's figure out how many were sold on Tuesday. I'm going to see where my bar stops. I'm going to go across. 30 tickets were sold on Tuesday. Okay, 30 on Tuesday. 18 fewer were sold on Friday than Tuesday. So 30 were sold on Tuesday and 18 fewer than that were sold on Friday. What do you think you need to do to figure out how many were sold on Friday? If you said you need to subtract, you are correct. So you need to take away the 18 fewer that they said were sold. Now we're going to do 30 minus 18. Hopefully you remember how to borrow. If we start here, we can't start with 0 and take 8 away. We don't have anything to take away. So we have to borrow one of the 10s. We're going to knock on the door of the 10s and say, can I borrow a 10? He's going to say, sure. So he's going to give away one of his 10s, and he's only going to have 2 10s left. And you're going to turn that 10 that he gave you into 10 ones. Okay? So 10 minus 8 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. So 12 tickets were sold on Friday. 12 is 18 fewer than 30. Okay. Let's look at number 4. The number of tickets sold on Tuesday can be grouped into 5s. How many groups are there? So we need to figure out how many groups of 5 there are in the number of tickets that were sold on Tuesday. And as we saw in the last problem, 30 tickets were sold on Tuesday. We need to figure out how many groups of 5 are in 30. So there's several different ways that you can figure that out. I want you to see first if you can figure out how many groups of 5 are in 30. And then I'll show you a couple ideas if you're stuck. Pause if you want more time to figure this out on your own. So let's think about it. One way I could figure out how many groups of 5 are in 30 is I could just count by 5s, and I could stop when I get to 30, and I could see how many times I need to count by 5 to get to 30. So I could start with 5, then 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this is 1 group of 5, 2 groups of 5, 3 groups of 5, 4 groups of 5, 5 groups of 5, 6 groups of 5 makes 30. So 6 groups of 5 is 30. Another way to think about that would be to say 5 times what equals 30. 5 groups of what is 30. Remember that that multiplication symbol stands for groups of. And we know that 5 times 6 equals 30. This is another really important reason why you really need to memorize those multiplication facts that we've been working on this year. Because problems like this are going to come up, especially as you get into the higher grade levels. And if you know your facts, you can figure it out quickly. Okay. Number 5. How many tickets were sold in all during the 4 days? You had a problem like this on your worksheet yesterday that you had to do on your own. So I can figure out how many total tickets were sold on all 4 days by adding up the number of tickets that were sold on Monday, plus the number of tickets sold on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, and on Thursday. And that's going to be a large number. I'm going to work it out over here. So Monday, if you see where this bar stops, 40 tickets were sold. Plus, on Tuesday, 30 tickets were sold. Okay, you should be working this out with me. On Wednesday, if I slide up and over, 20 tickets were sold. And on Thursday, 50 tickets were sold. So I want you to add those 4 numbers together, 40 plus 30 plus 20 plus 50, and see what you get. Okay, like always, pause the video if you want more time to work. So, in our ones column, we have nothing to add. It's all zeros. So we're adding 0, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. Now, in our tens column, 4 plus 3 is 7. Plus 2 more is 9. Plus 5 more is 14. So I would put my 14 here. 40 plus 30 plus 20 plus 50 equals 140. Now let's make sure that that sounds reasonable, because whenever you add a lot of numbers together, you don't want to just do the calculation without thinking about whether you got a reasonable answer. So think about it. If you add 40 and 50. 40 is kind of close to 50. So you could round this to 50. That would be 50 plus 50 would be 100. Plus 30 is 130. Plus 20 more is 150. So 140 is pretty close to 150. So you know that you got a reasonable answer. That makes sense. So all 4 days, 140 tickets total were sold. All right. Now, you are going to work through another problem or another worksheet. I'm going to display this here. And I want you to pause the video. I'm gonna fix it so that you can see all of the questions. I'm gonna pause the video. Don't worry, I'm gonna make it so that it's not sideways here in just a moment. And I want you to work through the whole page on your own. And then when you're done, I want you to unpause the video and see what the answers are, so that you can see if you got them right, and I will review them with you. But let me just fix this so that it is not upside down anymore. Working the way that I want it to. Trying to figure out. Okay, so I have the next page set up for you. I want you to number your paper or your dry erase board from numbers 1 to 5. Leave some space in between each one so that you can work through any problems that you need to do some calculations for. Solve these on your own. So I want you to press pause in a moment. I want you to solve all of them on your own. Try your best. Then we will review them together, and I can help you through anything that you may have made a mistake on. So please pause to work through them all by yourself first. Okay, hopefully you paused the video to work through these. If you did not pause it, please do so now so that you don't see the answers until you're done working. All right, number 1. How many more notebooks does Kareem have than Fiona? Kareem has 30 notebooks. Fiona has 25. 30 minus 25 equals 5. So Kareem has 5 more notebooks than Fiona. Number 2. How many fewer notebooks does Sarah have than Melanie? Okay, Melanie has 35 and Sarah has 15. So if we want to figure out how many fewer notebooks Sarah has than Melanie, we subtract. 35 minus 15 equals 20. So Sarah has 20 fewer notebooks than Melanie. Number 3. How many notebooks do Melanie and Sarah have altogether? Melanie has 35. Sarah has 15. When we add 35 plus 15, we get 50 for our sum. If you needed to, you could have written 35 plus 15 vertically and solved it like that. So you could have done it like this. And I'm writing it really small because I don't have space here, but you could have done it on your paper. 35 plus 15, and you could have done 5 plus 5 is 0, or is 10, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5, so 50. All right, number 4. Who has twice as many notebooks as Sarah? This is a tricky one. When we talk about twice as many, we mean 2 times that amount. So twice as many would be like multiplying that number by 2. So we know that Sarah has 15 notebooks. So if we multiply 15 times 2, we could figure out who has twice as many, okay? And we could figure that out. But I don't expect you to necessarily be able to multiply 15 times 2 yet. But you do know that when you multiply, you're also doing repeated addition. So when you multiply something by 2, you are adding that number twice. So it would also be like saying 15 plus 15, right? Because 15 2 times is 15 plus 15. And that's 30. So we have to figure out who has 30 notebooks, because 30 is twice as many as 15. Kareem has 30, as you can see here. So Kareem has twice as many notebooks as Sarah. Okay. Number 5. Which 2 students have a total of 65 notebooks? So we have to figure out 2 numbers on this graph that we could add together to get 65. And it would be Melanie and Kareem. Melanie has 35 notebooks. Kareem has 30. As you can see here, I added 35 plus 30 and I got 65. So total, the 2 of them have 65 notebooks. Okay, now your job is going to be to complete this page on your own. I'm going to scan it and put it into your document, your assignments page, so you can see the paper as you work on it. You'll use a blank piece of paper or a dry erase board again to solve the problems, and then you'll put them into a Google form. All right, good luck.